Hi everyone, it's Lorelei with Embrace Bend, and I'm here today with Janet from Mecca Bend as a part of our video series. Today we are here to talk in depth with you all about the question that we receive frankly often in this work around our undocumented community members, which is that if our neighbors here in Central Oregon aren't paying taxes or aren't contributing, then why should they receive any federal aid or support? And I mean, that's a huge misconception that we today are going to talk about in depth and explain. Janet, you are super knowledgeable about this topic. Would you mind sort of laying out for us how our undocumented neighbors pay taxes and how that whole system sort of works for them as opposed to those of us who pay taxes through a social security number?
Yes, Lorelei, it is a major question that comes up, and I think there's so much misinformation around it or lack of information or education on this specific topic. And we know that the human response to something that's unknown is usually fear, and a lot of times that's transmitted or displayed as anger or aggression towards the specific group of folks that are undocumented. And what I experience is that same question that you posed, is why should we give financial aid or relief to those that aren't contributing when nothing could be further from the truth? The undocumented community may not possess a social security number. That does not, however, translate or mean that they are not contributing tax dollars, and here's how. These folks that are sort of in line waiting for their documentation status to change are contributing because they are registered through the Internal Revenue Service and with the federal government through what's known as an ITIN number. That's an individual taxpayer identification number. While that's not the equivalent of a social security number, it does not guarantee their right to work in the United States, nor does it grant them any sort of citizenship status. It does give the employers who they are employed through the opportunity to do what they do with our wages, which is withhold that FICA tax or that Social Security fund and that Medicare fund that we all contribute to. The same way that a social security number works as in regards to employment with somebody, the ITIN number works the same way. So to make it very simple, if I'm a person that has an ITIN number and I earn, say, $1,000 at the end of every Friday, the employer is going to take my gross wages and is going to deduct, I believe the rate is 6.2%. So they're going to take 6.2% of my wages. They're going to hold it in what's called a trust account. And what the employer does is matches that same percentage, penny to penny, from what they've withheld from my paycheck. They're going to contribute the same amount, and that money is going to go directly to the IRS. So again, the misinformation or the misconception that because they don't have a social security number, they're not contributing is completely false. The ITIN numbers serve as sort of that social security number in that sense that they are contributing their tax dollars. Upon further research, we know that the amount that has been contributed for a lot of these folks is huge, but let's put it into numbers. In 2015, the American Immigration Council reported that over 4.3 million individuals filed a tax return in that year, meaning at the end of the year, they reported all of their earnings, all of their income under an ITIN number. And they paid over $13.7 billion collectively. So that's $13 billion that went directly to our economy here in the United States.
Thank you so much for laying that out for all of us, because not many of us are tax experts. So I appreciate that. And this really clearly connects to sort of why we're encouraging our neighbors here in Central Oregon to donate to our mutual aid relief fund, because we are encouraging folks, now that the stimulus checks are starting to come in, we're asking our Central Oregonians to donate their stimulus checks if they're in a position to, perhaps if they're employed still, or if they have access to healthcare through their employer, or if they're financially stable. For any reason, if you don't absolutely need your stimulus check, we're encouraging folks to donate it to this mutual aid relief fund to go to our undocumented neighbors and their mixed status families. And so one of the big reasons we're encouraging people to do this is not just to help our neighbors, but to also help our local economy, because the money that is given to our undocumented neighbors from the relief fund will be spent here in Central Oregon. It'll be spent at our small businesses. It'll be spent at the groceries. It'll be supporting the local economy that we all thrive in. Janet, I mean, is there anything that you would like to add to that whole discussion? Because I know that there's a lot of depth to it.
There is. It's more than just sort of this broad overview that we're giving, but it is exactly what you said, Lorelei. It is a direct infusion into our economy right here locally. We know that under these I-10 numbers, these folks cannot access the COVID relief fund that the stimulus package is giving to us as citizens of this country. We know that under an I-10 number, they also do not qualify for unemployment insurance through the state of Oregon, although they are still contributing, again, to that FICA and that Medicare and that Social Security tax. On that note, briefly, that's another major issue. The way that the system is built and set up is that these folks that have contributed thousands upon thousands of dollars, if they are ever deported or their citizenship status is not completely fulfilled, they forego that amount of money that they've contributed. So they cannot access that later when it comes to retirement age. That fund, that money stays in that so-called pot, and it actually is given to us as taxpayers and as citizens with valid Social Security numbers. So again, a direct infusion into our economy, a direct infusion into the bigger picture of the United States economy is something that I think a lot of folks are just not aware of.
So we're hoping that with this new information, you'll better understand the context for why we have set up a mutual aid relief fund and why it's going to who it's going to and how it impacts our home here in Central Oregon. If you're interested in learning more about what we're doing, you can check us out online at embracebend.com or at mecabend.com. That's where you can also find the link to our GoFundMe campaign. And again, we urge you to donate and to consider donating your stimulus check should you be in a position to do so. And this brings us to kind of a fun part of the video. We're going to be introducing someone very special. Janet, would you like to take over from here?
Yes, I'm super excited to introduce one of our newest volunteers that just came on board. There she is, Andrea. She is actually in charge of the text line that we set up for the Spanish-speaking community to access the application and ask questions or pose whatever doubts they may have. Andrea's on the other end of the line. So I'm going to switch to Spanish so that our community can get to know Andrea a little bit better. Hola, Andrea, si nos puedes dar una breve introducción a tu nombre y quizás tocar un poquito en la razón por la que estás aquí hoy.
Sí, hola, yo soy Andrea María Vázquez Fernández y es con mucha pasión que yo hago este trabajo para ayudar a mi comunidad latina y los que hablan el español, especialmente durante esta época difícil. Siento que tengo un privilegio por ser bilingüe y entender el inglés y el español y me llama mucho hacer este trabajo y estoy con mucho privilegio poder ayudar a estas personas con este, como que con llamar y poder apoyar nuestra comunidad.
Y nos has ayudado tanto con esta línea. ¿Nos puedes decir el horario que estás manteniendo, las horas que estás disponible para poder responder a estos mensajes de la comunidad latina?
Sí, estoy disponible todos los días de la semana durante las horas de 10 hasta 4 de la tarde. Y si no puedo llamarte inmediatamente, pueden dejar mensaje y lo más pronto que podemos contactar a usted te vamos a dar una llamada. Y el teléfono que pueden llamar es 458-202-9619.
Muchas gracias, Andrea. Apreciamos tanto tu ayuda. Thank you, Lorelai, for everything that you do also.
Thank you, Janet and Andrea. Thank you both for joining us. And I think we're going to say goodbye for today. Until next time. Bye, y'all.